many of you remember being taught to always holding your thread when you start to sew? And if you didn't, what happened? Usually like the thread came out of the needle, or it skipped stitches, or you got that big ball in the back of your fabric. Well, I'm going to show you why you do not have to hold your thread when you start to sew if you follow these simple steps on the Singer SE9180, or honestly, any sewing machine or embroidery machine you might be using. So first off, it comes to the fact that this machine, being electronic, is going to stop with the needle in the up position. So for example, when I go to sew, lowering the foot onto the foot control and just doing a straight stitch, once we get started, and as we stop, you see the needle coming to the highest point. Now, where people get in trouble is when we come over here, maybe we're finishing a stitch, but we start turning this hand wheel. And when we do that, and we're like, oh yeah, the needle's up out of the fabric, we're ready to take it out. But wait, no. If you look down in this area, you will find you are not seeing the take-up lever. Let me show you. As I turn the hand wheel towards me a little bit further, that take-up lever comes to the highest position. Now, when we actually just regular sew and we stop with the needle up, can you see that take-up lever? It's also at the highest position. That means when we take our fabric out, we cut our thread, or we use the thread cutter button. When we go to start, the last stitch has actually been completed, meaning when it starts the next stitch, it is starting where it needs to start. It's starting without having to finish the last stitch, and that's the key point. So right now, if I just have my thread, and I do tuck it down through the little groove so it's under the foot, and you can have the thread off to the side, like over here at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even 12 o'clock. But as soon as you put that foot on the fabric and start to sew, it's going to sew, but it's not trying to complete the last stitch, and that's where I think people get in trouble. Now, if you have a machine that is not electronic, maybe you're sitting at a different sewing machine that maybe helping somebody out, or that's the machine they have and you have to sew something. The key is that when you turn the hand wheel, that you finish the stitch. Just look for the take-up lever at the highest position. That way, when you start again, it's starting at the beginning. Is that making sense? So you don't really have to hold your threads. Now, here's one more tip along this way. When you go to start to sew, when you put your fabric in, you need to put your fabric in all the way to the point where your needle, when it takes its first stitch, needs to come down in fabric. Now, sometimes we put it so close to the edge that when the needle comes down, it comes into air. Well, that you might still need to maybe put your hands on the thread, let it get that first stitch started, and then get into the fabric. But yeah, you still could run into some problems. As long as you're starting with your foot on the fabric just enough. And here's a little trick I do. Like when I want to back stitch, I actually come into my fabric just a little bit, then start to sew, and you can go back, and you can even go back off the fabric. That's not a problem because the stitch is already like connected with itself. But then that way you know you're starting on fabric. So even if you're doing that back stitch, and there's a little extra hint on that, is if you start in the fabric, you back up and you go forward. If you have to take it out, which I learned at a very young age, I usually had to take it out. I didn't do it right, is I only had to take out 2 stitches. If you start here, go forward, go back, and then forward, I had to take out 3 rows of stitches, and that sometimes was hard when I was learning. So that's another little tip too. So all in all, you don't have to hold your threads when you start to sew, as long as you start in fabric, and also that you have completed the last stitch and the take-up lever is at the highest position before it starts. So if any of these videos are helpful, make sure you click that like button. Love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then find the link in the description below where we have all the other videos on this sewing and embroidery machine. The Singer SE9180 is quite a compact yet versatile machine for every sewer's needs.